Welcome to the Strong as Fuck podcast. I'm your host, Kenny Santucci, and join us for some strong conversations. Welcome back to another episode of the Strong as Fuck podcast. I am your host, Kenny Santucci, and as always, we are talking about how strong you have to be to live in the busiest, craziest city in the world, which is New York. And today we have a young lady who is the founder and CEO of Chillhouse. If you don't know what it is, go check it out. It's right in Tribeca. Great space. I've actually been there myself and had a phenomenal massage. My friend, Cyndi Ramirez, thank you so much for coming on the Strong as Fuck podcast. Let's jump right into it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming. So with starting a business here, you started very traditionally, right? You had a blog and then you jumped right into the brick and mortar. Mm-hmm. Give us some of the harder times that you came up when you were starting to do this, because having brick and mortar, you have to deal with so much shit. You have to deal with the landlords, you have to deal with the city. What was that like transitioning from what you thought was enjoyable to now this big project with a lot of overhead?
Yeah, definitely not for the weak of heart or the faint of heart, I'd say, having a physical space. Mm-hmm. But, you touched on this blog that I had back in the day. And I think for me, it was always, I wanted to have a physical space. It felt just like a real kind of coming home for, for me to actually be able to open something and make something, like a concept and kind of put it now in like the physical manifestation of it. It was like a dream come true. But yeah, what are some of the things that we dealt with? I mean, back in the day, it was 2017. There were really no rules around like, this kind of cafe and nail salon hybrid. And we just like kind of opened it thinking that we would kind of fly under the radar with like the health department. And we ended up definitely not flying under the radar. We were like immediately like flooded with amazing press, and like obviously like a lot of people walked through the doors. And I think at some point, the health department came in, they're like, what are you doing? You can't have a cafe next to your nail salon. So things like that. And we didn't.
What is the rules and regulations around that?
There weren't any. So we're like, oh, like, I think it's okay. Let's try it out. I mean, we had non-toxic polish. We did non-acetone nail remover. Like we did things as clean as possible so that we would be kind of like, with the keeping in mind that we had a cafe and we were going to put out like some small bites and obviously like beverages. But yeah, it was never, something that we, I guess, accounted for was this idea that we would have to reconfigure the entire space because the health department wouldn't be okay with this. Yeah. So things like that. That was like immediately 2 months in. It becomes a whole thing. We don't have enough in cash reserves to actually fund this. So it's like, Adam and I, my husband and I, like going into our own pockets to try to figure this out. It's that. And it was so much of that for so many years, and so many, little like just things that you don't even fathom could happen to your business, like pipes bursting during winter. We had multiple floods in that space in particular. I feel like the space was cursed. So
give us a little backstory for those who don't know. I know you started on the Lower East Side.
Yes. Backstory. Started on Lower East Side on Essex Street between Rivington and Stanton. Great little storefront.
But all those buildings are shit. They're 200 years old.
We also didn't know that we would be, we're the back of a residential building, or we were in the back of a residential building. So all of the trash was like in front of our storefront. Okay. And yeah, like rats, like people, like homeless people would like throw up. And like, it was just disgusting at times. I'm like, I'm trying to build a beautiful sanctuary. This is not really part of the aesthetic that I'm going for. So it was, just chaos, like the standard traditional New York City chaos from the get-go. And eventually I was like, I don't think this space is going to work for us. We tried to keep it around for as long as we could, of course, because, you have contracts, you have leases. But then COVID happened. So yeah, a lot changed.
So you signed that lease in...
So 2017 we opened the small space, and then in 2019 we opened up a bigger brick and mortar in 2019, and the idea is that we would keep both. So at some point we actually transformed the Lower East Side space to a face and body studio. Okay. And then that was very short lived because that was around COVID times, like right before COVID really hit, and so
now you open this beautiful space in Tribeca. I look at it all the time because I actually have a
Soho.
Is it Soho?
Yeah, it's above Canal.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So it's right there on the
It's right there. It's like in the,
I train a guy at a building right across the street, so I always look at it, I always see it.
yeah.
And it's a great space, but you open that in 2019.
Yes.
COVID hits. What's going through your head?
Oh my God. I was like, I mean, and my husband and I, we own bars too. We can get into that. So yeah, no, we had to close all of our physical spaces. As you know, it was like really, really unprecedented times with no answers. No one could, no real rule book for how to navigate such a crazy time that no one has ever experienced in their lifetime. So, yeah, it was very much just a game of like surrendering and kind of leaving things up to the government and
Yeah.
fate, too. It's like you can kind of sit around and wait for things to be handed to you or be told this is what you have to do, or you actually have to take matters into your own hands and pivot and do weird shit and like try to figure out how to survive. And that's what we did.
What did that pivot look like? Because you guys were like a service industry business, right?
Mm-hmm.
You relied on people coming through the door and getting these services. How do you pivot the brand?
So a few ways. Luckily, I'm like not good at sticking to one thing really well. Like I'm trying to actually shift that mentality a little bit now and stay a little bit more focused. But for many years, we were still kind of like trying to survive just off of the services, and it's not easy. The one-to-one service business model is really, really like
Very hard.
It's hard. It's
Yeah.
not really margin friendly. There's not a ton there left for the business owners. So we always had like multiple business models happening at any given time. We had a little retail shop. We had like a online retail shop, but then also we had a little curation in store. We did a lot of partnerships. So luckily, thanks to kind of like my personal brand, I was able to leverage a lot of brand partners to come and like, host events or do more like editorial based partnerships. I had my blog before Chillhouse, so I actually took that blog and turned it into a Chillhouse blog called the Chill Times. So we had multiple little different revenue streams happening for Chillhouse. So when we had to close the doors, we focused our efforts on trying to
Build
those other things up, which helped. But then product obviously ended up superseding that.
Yeah, it's funny how similar our two businesses are, because I said the same thing. We're basically doing the same thing. I have a small space. We're a service industry business. We couldn't provide that. I have shirts and I sell second product. I buy product from other people, whether it's supplements or whatever, gym stuff. But yeah, during that time, you're like, oh shit, how do I bump this up? But you pivoted really nicely. How'd you wind up getting into the nails
space.
and the products?
Yeah, so
Because that's hard. I mean, to start that from the ground up is very hard.
yeah, it's definitely like I always say like they're both very hard businesses, but if you strike gold or whatever the expression
Strike while
is,
the iron's
strike
hot.
while the iron's hot with product,
Yeah.
the U curve is much greater, faster.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what happened to us.
And that was all during COVID.
It was during COVID. It was obviously the right product at the right time in the right market for it. We had been like talking about doing this concept prior to COVID happening, but what we ended up doing was actually like fast tracking it. So we ended up launching it in August of 2020 as salons in LA probably didn't open until like end of 2020. Like there were still a lot of salons across the country that weren't reopened yet. Or even so, like a lot of people just weren't comfortable going back into like, their normal sort of beauty routines. So we definitely launched at a time that it was at the height of, at home nail care and at home beauty and all that. So yeah, the second we launched, we got retailer interest from Urban, from all sorts of retailers, and that's how it sort of took off.
So how intricate is building something out like that? For me, I'm always like, all right, and during that time, I was like, all right, maybe I'll try to sell supplements or something. What's the back end of that look like? Kind of creating this product.
Yeah.
Where do you get it manufactured? How hard is it to get it licensed and everything else?
Right, yeah. Well, luckily at the time we were working with a turnkey agency that actually came to us.
Oh, wow.
They were like,
Okay.
we can do whatever you want. We love your brand. Like we can help you figure out what makes sense for your brand and all these things. So we didn't just launch press-ons. We had body oils and we were trying to figure out what makes sense to us. And what ended up happening was that, the nails just made the most sense. We were able to do nail art outside of like our salon, which is like what people loved coming to Chillhouse for, is like for our nail art. But what was nice about working with them as a small business that didn't have a lot of capital or access to manufacturers and all that is that they did all of that work for us.
That's great.
And, we learned a lot through that experience. And then eventually now we're working with, we brought on a fractional head of product development that has incredible experience across different categories. She's done nail care. She's done, skincare, body. She's done it all. And so...
Was she a friend of yours or she?
No, she just came recommended. I'm part of this really great Slack group called Founders Weekend. And I don't even know if I'm allowed to talk about it. I feel like it's a secret society. But I'm part of this Founders group. And every now and then when I'm looking for just like really great key hires, I'll throw like a little request out there. And so she came recommended by that group. And,
wow.
Having access to people like that have been, that are 5 years deep into the experience that I, now need to like unlock is obviously instrumental. So that's the key to anything, right? I was a small business owner, still am a small business owner, but I was a small like brick and mortar business owner. I had no idea how to do product.
Yeah.
So it's really just about aligning with, like whether it's a product developer that you just, allocate a significant amount of like, capital, like retainer fees for that individual, or you work with an agency that can just do everything turnkey, shipped, delivered,
That's
done.
great. I didn't even know that existed.
It exists. I can make an intro.
Yeah.
They're great, but I think eventually...
So they just do any product. Like if you want to open up... That's so crazy.
I mean, I don't know about any product, but beauty and wellness.
Yeah. There was, I went to a really cool seminar like 6 months ago. And there was this woman, you probably heard of her, Cody Sanchez. Yeah. Unbelievable speaker.
Totally.
And it was so funny because she said to the audience, she's like, everybody should, if you don't have a business, you should be looking for a business to buy. And one of the first questions that was asked by one of the audience members, they were like, well, what business do I buy and where do I go find these businesses? And she's like, how many people in the audience would sell their business right now for the right price? And the entire room put their hand up.
Everyone's for sale.
Yeah. She's like, there you go. Ask somebody in this room. So it was so impressive. And, you don't even think about it like that because doing what you did, starting from the ground up, right? You built the foundation of this thing, which most people have the dream of like, hey, I want to create my own thing, my own line, my own product, whatever it may be. But doing it from the ground up is so much harder than just taking an existing business. Even I always use the example of like the UFC. People are like, oh my, I was like, no, it was a failing business. And this guy turned it into $1 billion industry within.
I didn't know that story.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Within 20 years, it was failing. It wasn't doing well. They said it was too brutal and all this stuff. Dana White came in, cleaned it up, rebranded it, and now it's a multi-billion-dollar company 20 years later. And it's only been like 20 years.
There are a lot of stories like that, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's real. And people always think like the only place you can make big money like that is tech. But I have a buddy who owns a couple car washes. And people are like, no, if you just brand it and put it on social media, because most of them are owned
washes,
by...
laundromats. What are the other... She was talking about like doggy daycares.
Yeah.
Like, there are a lot of those like very like, what do they call them? Just like blue collar, I guess.
Blue collar jobs,
yeah.
I think those make just as much, if not more. I think there's that dying breed of people who, work carpenters or electricians, and those jobs, like I find myself watching that shit on TikTok all the time, just watching people do like masonry work and shit around. So you started the blog. What was going through your head? Were you just doing this for fun? And I feel like you were ahead of the curve a little bit because we're about the same age, and I didn't know anybody who had a blog. And then when you find out who had one, you're like, wow, shit, they did really well off this thing because they started to build this foundation before it was even a thing.
I think, I don't talk about my blog Taste of Style much because it feels so, like I didn't make a lot of money off of it. It wasn't like a real business, like a real business. It was a fun lifestyle business, but it didn't set the foundation.
Yeah, but you didn't set out to make it a business, did you? Or it was just kind of...
I mean, that's the hope. It was around the time that like Infatuation was really blowing up. And like, I looked to them as like, potential roadmap for Taste of Style at some point. But no, it just never really took off to the point that I could actually make a good living from it. So I think and it was around the time that my husband was opening up these bars, and I come from a hospitality background. I was really missing that like one-on-one in-person experience that I wasn't getting from like being behind a computer and like doing like this like digital like media work. So I was just really, really craving that. And I think it all came like flooding to me at once. And that's kind of what happened with Chillhouse. I was like, we need a space that people can go like a third space. Like I can't keep going to bars. Like I can't keep eating and drinking my way through New York City. I need to like find a place where I can actually go and like get a manicure or get a massage, but also get a matcha and work if I want to, you know? And then it all kind of hit me. I was like, oh my God, like I grew up in this world. My mom is an esthetician. I grew up in spas, and I would tell her, we need a nail salon. And she wouldn't listen to me. She's like, I don't know how to do it. I'm like, well, I'll help you. And she just wouldn't listen to me. So there were a lot of things, I think, growing up that kind of stayed with me. And I was like, wow, I've been trying to tell my mom how to run a business for the modern girl, and she just wasn't taking to it.
Yeah.
And so I just sought out to fix it. And luckily, Adam and his business partner, Gavin, they had been through this before. They've opened up physical spaces. They know how to negotiate leases. They know how to do build outs. So definitely lean on them. I can't say even now to this date, I know I don't have the handbook for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like if you can do something here, you can apply it into any physical space. So that's what we did.
Well, it's funny because anytime, you know, I have somebody on here and they're like, oh, well, you built your business by yourself. I go, by no means did I build it by myself. I go, I failed twice. I go, no, along the way, I've met different people who help me handle different parts of the business.
Yeah.
Like there's no one person who understands all parts of the business.
My husband may be that person. He's so annoyingly good at
But
everything.
he couldn't do what you did.
No,
right?
no,
Like
no,
you
no.
found this, and this is another point that I love to make is that you found something. It was almost, I hate using the word selfish, but you're like, I want a space where I can go and do these things.
Oh, yeah.
But if you have that feeling,
Those are the best businesses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a million other people who are like, wait, I want that too.
Yep.
So now you created this space, but at the same time, like I hate doing a lot of the stuff that Christy does. And she's so on top of it. She's really good with logistics. I am horrible at that. So when people are like, oh, did you do it all yourself? I was like, no. I was like, there's a whole side of the business I really don't understand and that I couldn't manage myself.
Yeah.
So it's great. So take us through that situation, right? You guys, when did you guys meet? And then,
man,
yeah.
A long time ago. So my husband and I, we've been kind of at this entrepreneurship game for quite some time together. He's broken off and he's had different businesses with different business partners and kind of has had successful businesses on his own in his own right. But luckily, he's been my only business partner. I've done things on my own, but he's been my only business partner with Chillhouse, really, that like, we're like, you know, it's him and I really running the show here.
Easier or harder to work with you?
We've gone through some rough times for sure. And we still have to work at it 100%. But I think it's really important to identify your roles like so clearly to the point that if it's like, you have to have like someone has to make the final decision. It's like, well, does it kind of land on my plate? Is this like, you know, does it fall under creative direction, which technically kind of I am, even though he likes to have some creative control, then like maybe that's the argument that can be had, right? It's like this falls under my role.
Well, you guys are both very stylish. Every time I see him, he's always dressed to the nines.
Yes.
This guy looks great. So yeah, I'm sure he's got some.
He's got good taste. He has good intuition for the brand too. So I do feel like we're both super hard-headed. He's not used to hearing no. I'm not used to hearing no. So that's the hard part to navigate. But yeah, like anything, you just have to work through it. And I'd rather do it with him than anyone else, honestly.
And I mean, I've had two businesses that with partners in the past, and you always hope that it's going to work out for the best. But I think a lot of the problems, especially for myself, came when the business actually starts making money, right? Because when you first start out, everybody's got bright eyes and bushy tails and like, oh my God, this is going to be amazing. But there's no real money to chop up. Then when you have to start chopping up money. So I think that's where you guys kind of, it might be a little bit easier because it's going to the same
There's no
pot.
greed.
Yeah.
There's no greed. Although I always said I wanted to have more equity in that.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, I have more equity than him in Chillhouse, 100%. I have to.
Yeah.
Because it's my face.
That's your baby.
And he has his own bars. So it's like, this is my only real thing.
So how do you guys navigate, running all these businesses together, having two kids? I mean, you guys got a lot going on.
Oof, yeah. We have a lot going on, but we have good infrastructure. Like anything, we've built the foundation of the building of, Cyndi and Adam's little empire. So we have definitely set ourselves up in a way that makes sense for our life. We have great support back home. Our family's down there now. My cousin is our nanny. She's
Oh, that's
watching
great.
both kids. She's young enough. She has energy. Her kids, her family and her live across the street from us too.
That's great.
So we've got this little like commune thing
Yeah, where are
happening.
you living now?
I'm in Miami.
Oh, wow.
I want
Okay.
to, yeah. So it's funny. We're talking about New York, and only the strong survive here. But
Yeah.
I don't know if I am. I don't know if I was built for New York at this age
Yeah.
anymore. I'm
So,
like,
but most of your stuff is here. Most of your business.
yeah,
is here.
our businesses are here.
Yeah.
We technically don't have anything right now in Florida or in Miami, but Adam and crew are opening up a West Palm Beach Rocco's,
Oh, wow.
which is really
Okay.
fun. So we'll start planting seeds there for sure. But mostly right now, it is a place for us to really get a lot of quality work done.
Mhm.
We're just way more at peace there. And then when we come here, we do the stuff. We do the rounds, you know,
runaround,
and
yeah.
like the runaround. And I feel like that split, or like that kind of balance of both, we're like at the peak of our careers because we've been able to do both well.
Yeah. Have you ever felt like there was a point in the businesses where you're like, oh shit, this is, because I've talked to many business owners about this. Like there's always this like make or break point where you have to almost double down on yourself and double down on the business
Yeah.
and take it to the next level or watch it collapse.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely there.
Yeah.
And we're doubling down. We're putting all of our eggs in this basket of Chillhouse, and in the bars too. I think we've identified that what we've resisted for so long is like this idea of like identifying one thing that works well and just replicating it. I think we're just such serial entrepreneurs, like in the sense that we love to create things that we want for ourselves,
Mhm.
and sometimes forget that if something's working, you should multiply that.
Yeah.
So that's what we're working on. So we're just gonna continue doubling down on the success of Chillhouse. Our goal next year is definitely to like do way more nail care, have more options for our nail care fanatics.
Mhm.
And then we'll see where that journey takes us. You know, we have a bit of a 5-year plan, but things can change or things modify depending on success, you know? But yeah, it's very much like a go time. Like we're pressing the acceleration button.
Yeah. No, I find that very scary. I'm in the middle of opening up a new
I love how
space.
you're like scary.
Yeah. I mean,
Not exciting.
yeah, I think it does both, right?
Yeah.
I tell everybody when you're doing something, if it doesn't scare you just as much as it excites you,
Totally.
then you probably shouldn't do it.
Right.
You know, and right
Can't
now,
feel too safe always. That's just boring.
yeah, because if it feels too safe, it almost feels like something's wrong.
or inauthentic.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, I completely agree with the idea of like, just if it's working, why not just replicate it and do it again?
Yeah, stop fucking shit up.
Yeah.
I've fucked shit up way too often.
Well, I think
and
just because you're
I'm
creative.
happy to admit to it. Yeah, creative, or just like saying I was like, I don't know, yeah, bushy-tailed and doe-eyed, I guess.
Yeah.
And like I got excited at opportunities and I said yes to them, when in hindsight I should have just realized it could have been a bad opportunity.
Well,
that was just testing me.
That's probably where you have a very unique experience, that so many people probably come to you with so many great ideas, or shitty ideas too, but they want to kind of piggyback off what you've created a lot. How often is that happening? Like people are like, hey, we'd love to include you in on this, and you know, new projects.
A little bit. I'm trying to, I'm like starting to dabble in like advising and potentially maybe angel investing here and there, although I can't get too distracted. So that's
Yeah.
always the hard part. It's like I want to help and I want to be part of all these like female founder groups and get involved and like be a mentor, but it's hard because, you know, then it's taking away from my success a little bit, even though that to me is like not an end goal. Like I don't necessarily see myself as someone that's like gonna start a venture fund or anything like that, but I would love to be able to have more brain capacity to help people that are very early on in the careers. And I don't even have the answers all the way through yet, because we're still in the building phase, right?
Well, because you get asked to speak on a lot of, like we're talking about the create and cultivate, you know, you get asked to speak a lot. What do you find that people are most interested that you have to say?
People love to find out, fundraising, money, how do you do it, even
Yeah.
hiring or branding,
Mhm.
marketing, what works, what
The
doesn't.
branding's great. You nailed the brand.
We're going through some changes, Kenny.
Yeah.
I think by the time this actually comes out, people will see that it feels a little different. We're
Mhm.
gonna make some audits to the website. The brand is gonna have a little bit of a refresh. I think like every 7 to 8 years, you have to take a step back and look at your brand and
Yeah.
make sure that it's still relevant. So we've been doing a little bit of that.
That was my
It's
next
really
question.
fun.
Like, when do you feel is the right time to do that?
Yeah, every like 6 to 7 years, you should
Yeah.
do a little audit on your brand and just make sure that it still reflects your values and where you're heading.
Would you say that your brand is growing with you as you grow, or does it stay in that demographic that
It's
are looking?
staying in that demographic, and that's a really great question because I'm getting older. I'm a mom of 2.
Mhm.
I don't always see myself reflected in like the social media feed anymore because it's definitely like people that are a little younger. But that doesn't mean that I'm not the prime customer still.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that like we only have to cater to a certain audience. I want Chill House to feel like without, being for everyone because that's kind of impossible too. I want it to feel like a place or a brand that, someone that's in their 40s can easily like bring into their, vanity as much as like the 13-year-old. Like
Mhm.
I think of it like mom and 13-year-olds. Like that is
Yeah.
like my core and I'm trying to bridge that gap and still make it cool for like the 20 something that's like very edgy and like,
I feel like definitely in my business, that category is growing, the 40 plus category,
yeah.
that people want to start taking care of
Oh
themselves.
man, yes.
Right?
I'm
Do
in
you
that
see that?
camp. A
Yeah.
100%. I've never been more into wellness. I get sucked into all like the reels of like
Do you think that's what
longevity
it
and
is?
life.
Like, is it
Yeah.
the social media of like all these talking heads always being like, "Just take care of yourself and do cold plunges and all this shit."
I think we're becoming more aware of how serious it all is
Mhm.
and how possible it is to
Take
adopt
care of
these
yourself.
like
Yeah.
lifestyle modalities into our life and it's totally acceptable and it's totally available to us now way more than it used to be,
Mhm.
so why not do it?
Yeah.
I think of it like now I'm trying to do Pilates with a trainer, like with like a private
Private trainer.
Pilates.
Where do you go?
Well, I go to I'm in Miami.
Yeah.
I'm going to really awesome woman there, but yeah, it's just you know, I don't have I don't have like a therapist, like a regular therapist. So I
Yeah.
look to her as my therapist because my body is now something that I am working on. It's,
Mhm.
I'm not working necessarily on this muscle at the moment, my mind
Yeah.
per se. I'm working on my body. And like depending on like what it is that you're working on with your body, then you allocate your efforts towards that.
Don't you feel that when you leave Pilates, you're just in a better headspace,
100%.
mind space?
Yeah.
I try to I always say I wish I could bottle that up and let people taste that once and see if they would chase that like they chase other cravings, right?
Mm.
Like when you think about it, you feel so good after the gym and after you work out. And I think if more people experience that, then they wouldn't be so hesitant to go to the gym and to take care of themselves.
That's such a good point.
Yeah.
Like carry that feeling with you forever and then yeah.
And then you're like, oh, if you could take like a little shot of in the morning, you're like, all right, if I want to chase this sensation, then I should go and
I love
check this out.
that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna think of that next time.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be lazy.
But I think in our demographic and our
Mhm.
age group, I think people are more aware. And I think now we have what we didn't have before was the education and the understanding of like how to take care of ourselves
Yep.
more so than our parents. Like when our parents were our age, it was like, oh, you guys are hungry? Let's go to McDonald's. And you're like, now would you, I mean, I don't know if you do, but you don't take your kids to McDonald's, right?
I don't. And we gave Hendrix Shake Shack the other day because we were being lazy parents. And totally, if you eat Shake Shack, I mean, I love Shake Shack. Who doesn't? But
Yeah.
yeah, he was so nauseous the next day. He
Really?
was like, thought he was going to throw up. And I was like, I have a vomit phobia. So I'm like, no. And then I realized it's because, yeah, he ate a lot of greasy food the night before. So now I'm just way more conscious of how we
What you're
feed
giving him.
ourselves and when we give him and how we feed ourselves because it really does obviously make a difference. It's not like news to anyone
Yeah.
that I'm saying this. Yeah.
So, I mean, you've talked about a lot of the things you've accomplished, but one of the hardest things is being a mom.
Mhm.
And I always say I admire parents because it is such a hard task these days. I mean, we didn't grow up with the internet, so they have all this extra information that they're getting fed. And, there's so much more I think that a parent has to deal with.
I'm not quite there yet. I don't even know what to do
Yeah.
in that situation.
Well, because people look to you and they're like, oh, she probably has all the answers. So what,
Well, I don't know what we're gonna do when Hendrix is 4 years old, and
mhm,
then Stevie is gonna be 1. So by the time they have access to phones, what's gonna change? I don't know. I feel like AI is gonna be, 10x what it is now, and it's gonna be a world that we have to navigate year by year. Decide kind of like as time goes by, as tech changes, as studies come out about mental health and kids, like that. Those are decisions we have to make
yeah,
as we get a little closer. Because Adam loves to send me like the Anxious Generation, like podcasts with that writer, and we've talked about it a bunch. I'm like, babe, like we can't make these decisions yet. We're not there yet.
yeah.
Technology moves so fast, like we don't know what's going to happen. And I actually listened to Prof G a lot too, and he was saying how I don't know who he was talking to, I forget, but they were talking a lot about how yes, fine, kids like we don't want them to have access to social media at a super young age, but by limiting them completely from having a phone or social and it creates social problems that, fine, like maybe they're not developing like certain mental health, disorders at a young age or
Hmm.
anything, but they're going to potentially get bullied by their friends. Like the impact of the social impact of it may
Yeah.
be different, and then it could impact them from a mental health capacity too. So what's to say? It's kind of like you can't really
It's,
make a decision quite until you're in it.
it's so hard because well, my sister has 4 kids. My brother has 4 kids. One of my best friends has 3 kids. And I look at them and I'm like, their head is constantly on a swivel, right? They have to be like, they got to take them to practice. Where are they?
Yeah.
Are they safe? Who are they with?
Yeah.
And it's so hard these days and it's so crazy. But, I think there's such a fine line between giving them, and, obviously you worked your ass off, your husband worked his ass off to give your kids everything they want.
Hmm.
Um, but there's a fine balance between giving them everything they want and then what they need to survive. Where do you
Hmm.
stand with a lot of that?
Yeah.
Because you want to spoil them, right? Like,
I mean, totally, and we do. He
yeah.
gets all the toys he wants. I mean, we try to explain money to Hendrix. He's still so young to
Mhm,
really understand what we mean, but we talk about mommy and daddy go to work, and we go to work because we need to make money.
mhm.
Money are the things that buy you your toys. And if you want a toy every day, then we don't have as much money. It's like you gotta have to
Yeah,
break it down step by
yeah,
step and
yeah.
explain life to them in a way that makes sense to their day to day. So they're just piecing everything together and they know that they can't just ask for whatever they want. I have a hard time with it because I don't think kids should be handed things completely down from their parents. I think they should work for everything as hard as I've worked for it.
Yeah.
I don't want them to feel the anxiety that I dealt with growing up, in a very financially rocky situation. Same with my husband. Neither of us come from a lot of money. My mom we've had a very, very, roller coaster ride with money. And we've had, my mom has been successful, but then lost everything. And then I've had to help her. We've
Mhm.
just our entire life. And same with Adam. We've had that relationship with money. It's kind of like we're not afraid to lose it. Therefore, we kind of put everything on the table.
That's very impressive.
It's brave, but that's
Yeah.
all we know,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So it's kind of like I don't know that I want him to have that sensation growing up, because that's not fair to him,
Mhm.
right? And it shouldn't be something that or an example that we should set for our kids. I want to teach them how to save. I want to teach them to be responsible with their money. I want them to enjoy money, the way that I like to enjoy money and
Mhm.
having, buying myself something nice when, I have like, something to celebrate or whatever. I think that that's important. I think there's a lot of value in instilling those kind of principles with your kids too. Like celebrate the wins, but also like don't be an asshole. I would never, if I see him out at a Miami nightclub spending any money on bottles, like I will like rip him out of that club. Like I'm
Good.
sorry. I
Yeah,
love bottle waitresses, but in no means do I want him giving all his money to
for sure.
club owners and bottle waitresses.
I totally agree. I think our generation, we grew up with that. That was the coolest thing, and you had to do it.
Yeah,
And when
unless
I
it's a
look,
birthday and then all the guys chip in or
yeah,
whatever,
but
the crew chips in, but
I remember, not having that much money, but you're like, I have to do this weekend. It was so part of our
mhm.
generation.
Mhm.
And I look back and I'm like, how stupid was that?
I know, so
You
wasteful.
you spend $3,000-$4,000 on something that cost the bar $20.
Oh,
You know?
totally.
It's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, a buddy of mine, he lives down in Philly. He's got a very successful brand. It's called Fuel Hunt. His name's Drew. Great guy. And he was telling me, he goes, Ken, sometimes I find myself manufacturing hard times for my kids because I want them to understand what that feels
I
like.
want that problem.
Yeah. he's
That's
like,
awesome.
yeah, but it's true. And I go, dude, that's so, and then again, you're like, is that right? Is it wrong? It's so hard. That's why being a parent, like there's
I don't think
never,
there's anything wrong with that.
yeah,
You know, showing them like if your life is good, like it can't always be good. You know, we have to like grant they're gonna go through everything we've been
and
through.
but you want them to like feel kind of how shitty the world could be.
Yeah,
You know?
and they need to be prepared for it. So you can't just like keep them from all of this
Mhm.
pain and suffering forever and ever. They can't be in this little like isolated box. And granted, like we live in Miami now, so things are a little calmer on the day to day. But when they're here, they see the real world and yeah, it's I think it's very important to share that with your kids for sure.
So you guys are looking at some spaces down in West Palm Beach?
Yeah, we already have it. It's
okay.
like being kind of built out. It's going to take some time, but hopefully
Okay.
by end of next year, we'll have a
Cool.
space there.
So you have a Rocco's down there. Are you looking to
Rocco's.
open a chill space down there as well? Or?
No, not yet.
Okay.
We'll see. I'm never going to say never. I think in an ideal world, I'd have a couple flagships for
Mhm.
sure. And where I'd put them, probably Miami and LA. That's my dream scenario right
Okay.
now because we have so much work to do on the product front. I think I just say I'm like focused there at the moment.
Mhm.
But yeah, I love physical space. And oh my God, Miami could really use a chill house. Not
Where,
gonna lie.
yeah.
Yeah.
Where are your other kind of cities, like dream cities you would go to?
Well, I opened in Paris and that was a flop.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah, I kind of it's like kind of fell under the radar with a lot of people, I'd say, and I don't really talk about it much. It seemed like a dream opportunity because
Mhm.
Paris is Paris. It's my favorite city. But yeah, we had to open up a Paris like a business in France,
Yeah.
and that part of it was super, super, super hard. It
No way.
Yeah, and
harder
like
than New York.
learn how to do HR there. It's
Yeah.
harder than anything I've ever done.
Wow.
It's also like overseas, not
Yeah, yeah.
understanding the
that.
language, like completely new business practices.
Mhm.
And no one, I mean, we had someone kind of helping us, but they didn't know everything either. And it was just remember I was saying like bad decisions that
Yeah.
I've made. That was probably one of the worst.
Okay.
Yeah, that was up there.
So you took a little bit of a loss with
Oh yeah, not like a huge loss, luckily, but enough that it was like we have to put a stop to this because it's a risk to the
Yeah.
greater business.
Stop the bleeding.
Stop the
Yeah.
bleeding, cut the limb off, I guess, and then just basically move on and say sorry to anyone that was involved. And that was hard too.
Awesome. Yeah. So, but here in the U.S., I feel like there's a lot of great cities. I just got back from Austin. I was down there this weekend,
Love
and
Austin.
I love that town.
That's where we met.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And like Austin, Nashville, like those are like really some up and coming cities. I
They
feel
are
like.
really great cities.
Yeah.
We've talked about that. I think the bars would thrive there.
Yeah.
For
Oh,
sure.
absolutely. I think that having that New York City feel
Totally.
in one of those cities, I think that's what works. Every place we end up going to, I was like, oh, this feels like New York. There was just this place we went to. It was called Guest House
Oh, cool.
in Austin. And me and my buddy were there. I was like, dude, this feels so much like New York. I think people are hungry for that
100%.
that New York vibe.
It depends. So for us, I think those kind of more like secondary cities are great for businesses that are full profitable, like brick and mortar spaces that like you need to have profitability within
Mhm.
that versus like what Chillhouse is on in the product world. Like we're trying to do so much with product that the stores need to be in the cities where we can host the big events.
Okay.
We can have the celebrities stop by.
Yeah,
Do
yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, that
So
makes more sense.
I'm
yeah.
trying to follow a little bit like the salon model, if that makes sense. Like
Mhm.
think about like some of the bigger salons in the world or hair brands in the
Yeah,
world,
yeah, yeah.
like Bumble and Bumble and like IGK. IGK has salons, but they have them in very specific cities.
Yeah. LA, Miami, New York. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Cyndi, thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you. This was so
awesome.
fun.
Yeah, this was a great convo. I hope you guys learned a lot. Thank you so much for sharing all your stories and stuff. But where could everybody find you? What's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah. My Instagram is at Cyndi Ramirez, CYNDI. I was named after Cyndi Lauper. And my business is at Chillhouse.
What, are you a Cyndi Lauper fan?
Of course.
I'm one of these people where it's like sometimes I watch like old videos from like the Goonies song, right? Like that old music video. And I'm like, it just gives me such a nostalgia. I'm like, how do I recreate that? So cool.
Do it. Bottle it up.
Bottle it up. Well, thank you again so much. I appreciate it. Guys, go check out Chillhouse. Go check out Rocco's, which is a great spot. I was there the opening night. That was fun.
Yeah. Come back.
But again, thank you so much for having.
Thank you.
Thanks to you so much for coming here and sharing your time.
Thank you.
And we will see you soon.
Yes.
Thank you, guys. Always like, share, subscribe. Tell your friends about it because we're really trying to make this show a thing.